Hello and welcome back to The Premise. I'm Jeniffer Thompson.
I'm Chad Thompson.
And we are here today with a local San Diego writer, Matt Coyle, who also is the recipient of one of our San Diego Writers Festival awards. So, Matt, this is a real pleasure to have you here on The Premise. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. Do you remember the story of the Mystery Writer Award?
I do.
Well,
Why? What are you thinking?
well, I was driving and you called me and you said, "Hey, I think you were saying how we want to find out how we can get you this award." And I said, "What award?" And you said, and I said, "Whoa." And then you went, "Oh my God, I'm sorry. It's another Matt." And I went, "Okay." And so then Marnie Freeman called me after that and she goes, "No, there's two Matts." And I said, "Hey, listen, Marnie, don't worry about it. If I didn't win an award, you guys don't have to give me an award just because
I remember
somebody
that.
made a mistake." But
You were like, uh-oh. No, but we did want to give you an award.
yes, I was very happy. And then when I saw the award, which is probably one of the nicest awards I've ever gotten, it's very nice. It's heavy glass. I figured, no, they wouldn't have gone and had this done just because they thought they made a mistake and made me feel bad.
They are really pretty awards, aren't they? I noticed
Really?
you put a photograph of yours on your website, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, thank you for graciously receiving the honor. You know, when we come up with the awards, we really want to try and highlight local people. So it only made sense that you got a San Diego Writers Festival Award. It had to happen. It was going to happen that year. One of those years it was going to happen. That was your year for sure. Well,
Honored.
let me tell our listeners a little bit about who you are. So Matt Coyle is the best-selling author of the Rick Cahill PI Crime series. He was named the 2021 San Diego Writers Festival Mystery Writer of the Year, and his novels have won the Anthony Award, the Shamus Award, the Lefty Award, and the San Diego Book Award, among others. Many others, I might add. He has also received nominations for numerous Anthony, Macavity, Barry, Shamus, and Lefty Awards. Odyssey's End is 10th in this award-winning series. Matt is a graduate of UC Santa Barbara, and he lives here in San Diego. So again, Matt Coyle, thank you for joining us on The Premise.
Well, thanks for having me. I jumped into my bio before you were ready. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I figured, I think I mentioned it actually, because we have to, right? So The Premise, San Diego Writers Festival, we had to mention it.
We run things a little
Great
fast
festival.
and loose
It's a lot of
around
fun.
It is a good festival. This year was a pretty amazing festival.
This year
Were
was
you there?
interesting. Yes, I
Well,
was.
I don't know if we've told our listeners. Most people probably already know, but the festival is held in Coronado, which is a peninsula, but people like to call it an island. So getting there, you travel over the bridge, and there was a jumper on the bridge this year. So we had to push everything back an hour, which worked out actually. But it was pretty touch and go there for a while. We weren't sure if people were going to be able to make it, if our speakers would be there, if there'd be anyone in the rooms, but it actually went pretty smoothly, all things considered.
I just missed the bridge
Yeah.
because I was going to take it. And I always have my GPS on no matter what, even though I know where I'm going all the time. It's an anal thing
That's
trying
smart.
to
That's very
make
smart.
better time.
Yeah.
So I'm just about to get off and it says go down to wherever the hell you cross down there on
Imperial
real land.
Yeah.
And I looked back as I was going by, I went, oh, they're backed up. What's going on?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was quite a delay. We actually, on my panel, we had Joe Ide from LA. He got there probably about halfway through. The other two LA writers had come the night before.
Yeah. It was pretty scary. I will tell our listeners the jumper did not jump, which is such good news. It really put a real cloud over the beginning of the festival, but everything went well, and everyone was just, I think it created this casual, things are going to happen. We're going to enjoy the day. It was a gorgeous, beautiful sunny day. So I think it was like, you know what, things are going to happen. Let's just go with it and enjoy the day. And that's what happened. So we were really grateful for everyone just being so, willing to roll with the punches, as it were.
Yeah, you guys do a really good job with that conference.
Thank you.
Everybody loves it.
Yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate that. So we're going to talk about the 10th book in the Rick Cahill series, Odyssey's End. I want to say this is the first Rick Cahill book I've read, and I was really impressed with the fact that you I didn't feel like I needed to read the previous 9 books to really sink my teeth into this book. And yet I noticed that there were Easter eggs. I don't know if you meant to do this, but it just felt like Easter eggs that you left for loyal readers. Like, for example, Midnight, Rick Cahill's dog, had a limp from trying to protect his family. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I wonder what happened there, right? So there's like little things where it doesn't detract, but it makes you want to go back and read the previous books. I guess I'm curious, like, does that just happen organically, or do you think about that? Like, I want to leave little Easter eggs for my loyal readers, or how does that work for you?
It's a delicate balance when you write a series and you do have a lot of carryover. This guy, Rick Cahill, has had a lot of emotional and physical disruption in his life. And so you want to give first time readers like yourself a little taste of how he got to where he is, but you don't want to bore your
Right.
long-term readers, and you also
Yeah.
don't want to give too much so your new readers don't have to go back. But
Right.
yeah, Easter eggs are always fun. I drop Easter eggs. Sometimes I drop a name of a friend in that they don't know that they're going to be in there.
So
I
people who
always
know
enjoy
you
that.
know. That's cool. Yeah, I like
Then I
that.
find out exactly when they read the book when they email me. Um,
They can't
yeah, but that's
lie.
really the hardest to me for writing a series. That's the hardest part, is that balance of giving enough for first readers to get a sense of the character and not giving too much to ruin it for bore my old readers and ruin spoilers for my new readers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done.
Thank you.
So for those of us, or our listeners rather, who haven't read your books, tell us where the idea for the Rick Cahill novels came from.
Well, I knew I've read the genre. I've read mysteries my whole life. Started with Agatha Christie and Conan Doyle, and graduated to Raymond Chandler, Ross McDonald, Dashiell Hammett. And so when I started reading Raymond Chandler, I just know this is what I want to write. I want to write detective fiction. It's considered hard boiled. I just consider all the genre crime, but this is what I want to write. And I had an idea for a character for years, but really I didn't know what I was doing. I was working for a golf company when I was 43, and I saw I was going to go out of business, and I'd seen three other of them go out of business before it. And I said, well, when this goes down, I'm going to take some time and write that book that I told people I was going to write, never did. And as I was writing it, it's a first book, autobiographical, as all first books are, and first person, even worse. And I it was too autobiographical. It wasn't very interesting. My life hasn't been particularly interesting. And I met an author. You may know, he's a San Diegan, Alan Russell, local mystery writer. At a writers' conference, he had the misfortune of reading, 30 pages of a first draft. He told me, you can write, and that was good because you're writing in a cocoon. You don't really, you don't have any
Yeah.
feedback at all. But he said
Yeah.
it's just too autobiographical. You have to get more away from yourself, and that was the best advice I ever got.
Hmm.
So the farther I got away from who I was, the more I found this character, and really the way things opened up for me is a line came to me out of my subconscious, which is a woman, Carolyn Wheat, who has been a mentor to me, has told me many times that my subconscious is a better writer than I am, and I believe it. Which
Hmm.
was the first time I saw her, she made me remember and she made me forget. And that told me this guy was much darker than I've been writing, and I really had to explore what had gone on in his past. And then, ironically, that's where I wanted to go. I wanted it to be darker. I didn't know how to get there. I wanted it to be less autobiographical. So, but I always wanted to have a damaged protagonist. I always wanted to write a PI, and I just had to find a backstory how I got him to where he was in the beginning of Yesterday's Echo, my first book.
Yeah. Did you always know it would be a series when you first started, or did that come to you later?
It came to me probably somewhere in the writing of the first book. I Like, as I mentioned, I made the mistake of telling people that I was going to write a book, and
They hold you to
so
it.
yeah, and it only took me 30 years to start doing it. And so I just, like I said, I had some money saved up. I knew I'd have some free time because this golf company was going to go out of business. I'd seen the handwriting on the wall, and I said, "This is it. The line is in the sand. You've got to write the book, or quit pretending it's something you're going to do, and then actually pursue a career as opposed to being, working job to job." I've been in the restaurant business. I was in golf sales. I was in sports licensing sales, and I wasn't really pursuing a career because I always had this other thing, which I wasn't pursuing enough. So once I started writing it, I realized this is what I was meant to do, good or bad. This is what I was meant to do. And at that probably halfway through the book, when I'm learning more about this character, that there's so much more about him that I don't know, I realized I was writing a series.
That's
And
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
What surprised you most about Rick's journey?
How dark it got,
Mm.
and um, and that I was writing about something I didn't know that I was writing about consciously. Um, you and I talked a little bit about this off camera. Um, I think every mystery, I think every writer of fiction is working something out through their writing that's going on in their life, either subconsciously or consciously. Heard Michael Connelly say one time, someone asked him what he likes to write about. He says he writes about things that scare him.
Mm.
And
That's
I
cool.
didn't.
Huh.
I firmly believe every writer, fiction writer, is trying to work something out, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean they're scaring them, and it can be something they think about or something they don't think about. And I realized that I was writing about family probably 7 books in,
Mm.
and heavier about family as I went. And I don't have a family. I don't have any children, and there was a pretty major tragedy in my extended family's lives early in my life. Before I started writing, we lost someone young, someone special. And I realized that my books can be a little melancholy. I'm not going to say they're downers. There is some joy, there is some fun, light moments in them, but there's kind of an undercurrent rather of melancholy. And I realized just probably 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, that that's what I was working through this grief that
Mm.
our entire family felt, and also the fact that I didn't have family in it, and it affected me. I didn't have kids. I would never have kids. I'm too old now, and it affected me. And so that's a surprise. I wasn't, I had a couple of rules when I first started writing. And one of them was that Rick was not going to, he could maybe have a girlfriend again, but he wasn't going to get married. No way. And then 8 books in, maybe he made him a parent.
Yeah.
I gave him a child because his life progressed, and
Yeah.
that's what people do. And he thought he'd never have a kid after he lost his first wife. So I gave him a child, and I mean, talk about surprises. That surprised me, but my subconscious has been working on this all these years. And in Odyssey's End, I finally fully realized this is the direction I've been going in. So I fully embraced it more than any other book. And I just said, I'm going to open a vein and let it bleed and see where it goes.
Hmm. Speaking of bleeding, Rick is, in my opinion, such a sensitive male character. He's a sensitive family man who murders people, I guess is a good way to to accurately describe him. For example, he feels bad about breaking and entering, which I found to be very charming. Was he always sensitive, or did he really evolve into this sensitive character as he got older?
He was always sensitive. But then he said he's murdered people. He has murdered people. And
Yeah.
in his mind, they've deserved it. And they're bad people, but still he's been judged, jury, and executioner. And isn't every bad person judged, jury, and executioner? So how is he grapples with how he's different from the people
Yeah.
he's trying to rid the world of. Not that he's a vigilante, but he gets in situations. Um,
Most of it's defense, I'd say. He
yeah,
doesn't
and
go out
sometimes
and
it's
murder people per se.
future self defense where he says, "Well,
Right.
this
Right.
person's going to kill somebody, and this person's after my family or me. This can't stand." But when I decided that it was in the second book, actually, Night Tremors, where he very bad person, and it's a moment, just mere moments after what it would have been self defense, where he kills somebody. And I don't. It's not like he shoots somebody, then blows the smoke out of the gun. No, it affects him. He thinks about it. He realizes what he's doing, and it carries over. Yes, these people have deserved it, but there's only one being. There's only that should make the decision on life and death, and he's taking that right into his hands. So it does affect him. He does think about it. He is he is sensitive, but he's also can be very lethal.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Another way that he shows his sensitivity is through Midnight, his dog.
Yeah.
And like there's one scene where he decides he's either going to carry his dog upstairs or he's going to sleep on the couch, so he can be with his dog. And this relationship is very endearing. I'm curious if it's based on a dog in your life, or how did Midnight come to be?
Well, it's based on a few dogs in my life. And sadly, the dog that was with me for portions of the writings of all my books, Angus, a yellow lab, not a black lab like Midnight. I lost him almost 2 years ago now, as I
Hmm.
was writing this book, Odyssey's End.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in the office right now, and he would be behind me. I had a day job for many years where I worked from home, and once I realized I would start writing, I said, well, I can't write at the same desk that I work at in the daytime. I mean, I'll be in my office, 18 hours a day. It'll drive me crazy. So I got another nicer desk, and I put it on the other side of the room, and I put some inspirational stuff on the walls. But I quit my day job like 5 years ago. 5 years ago. But what Angus would do is as I'm facing the other wall, Angus would be sleeping under the other desk, but he was such a long dog. He would stretch he'd have his feet against the wall, but he would stretch all the way into my space. So he was always ever present, much love, very sweet. He was a special dog. He had a lot of health situations, but everywhere he went, he was kind of like Norm and Cheers. Everybody knew his name and was happy to see him, all the vets and everything. But anyway, yeah, when I was writing Rick, I decided, well, he wasn't going to have a sidekick. I broke that rule too. Thank God,
Hmm.
when I introduced Moira in the second book. But I thought, well, there's going to be one being that loves him. It's going to be his dog. And I'm a dog lover, clearly. So, yeah, Midnight was taken after probably two different labs, maybe three, Magic, Brody, and Angus. And here's the thing. Rick's been written. I write Rick in real time. And so that makes Midnight now he's 13, I think, in this book. So, he's not going to live forever. So
That was
that
going
would
to
be
be
a
my
sad
next.
moment.
Yeah, 100%. Well, and that was my next question: is how do you age Rick in the novels? But it sounds like he's aging with all of us.
Yep. Real time. He's 43, I think, in this book. And plus he's got chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the CTE, the pro football disease, which does tend to shorten your lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
So he's dealing with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, when Midnight, and this book's called Odyssey's End, and so it could be an end or it could be a pause. I'll just say that. But if Midnight were to pass, it would not be on the page. That would be too much for me and my readers.
I was going to
It would
say,
be
isn't
something where we come back and he's no longer there.
isn't the cardinal rule is you don't kill the dog?
You don't kill the dog, no.
But you can miss him.
Absolutely. I came close a couple times actually, because he
Really?
has been heroic, as dogs are. They'll do anything for their families.
Mm-hmm.
And Midnight has gotten Rick out of some scrapes and taken the physical toll for it.
Yeah, and there were some tight spaces in this book where some close calls, if you will, things that could
Yes.
have but didn't happen. One of the things I like too is that we're in Rick's head. So the first person narrative that you chose, I think it allows you to make him a little bit more vulnerable. There's things that were really inside of his head. He's self-deprecating a lot. We know exactly what he's thinking, and he's not sure he's going to get through these situations.
Yeah.
So I'm curious of how did you come to know it was in first person, and has that been difficult or easier in the writing process through the series?
Well, I think it's a cheat. Personally, when you write hard boiled, it's pretty much most hard boiled writers write in first person. Chandler did. Robert Grace does on his Elvis Cole books. It's kind of part of the genre, but I think I dabbled in third person a little bit, but it just felt much more natural. And there was a book, Rick's taken quite a bit of abuse over the years, called Blind Vigil, where he had actually lost his eyesight. Um, and
Hmm.
which was a great ending for the previous book. But then I've got this book. Oh, wait a second, you're a private investigator. He has to figure things out, find clues, and you're going to make him blind. And so I was so worried I couldn't pull it off in first person that I had a third person point of view character that was a bad guy, which
Hmm.
I liked. And I liked writing him. But then I realized the more I went that no, you can't do that. This is a Rick book. You got to figure out how to do it. And it was probably one of the most rewarding books when I finally just figured out how I could make my way through that.
Hmm.
Um, but ironically, I'm writing in third person now. I'm doing something completely different. And it's much more difficult for me. I mean, third person, there's definite negatives to third person when you're writing mysteries or thrillers, which I don't think I really write thrillers, but because whatever, you only know what happened. The reader only knows what the protagonist knows. They can maybe think he's got something wrong or something else is going on that he doesn't see, but you can't see violence or what have you, or plot points that happen away from him.
Yeah.
So that's the challenge, but also being you do get to know the character better, being in their
Mm-hmm.
head,
Mm-hmm.
and also that you have to be careful with that. You have to be careful with how much, and we get reviews, not reviews, but Goodreads reviews, where and those count sometimes. Um,
Yeah, right.
Whereas
Sometimes.
if it's too much for some people, but that's fine. I'm always riding Rick on a tightrope. There
Mm-hmm.
was a woman that came up to me at Warwick's for Odyssey's End, and I get there early and I sit out ahead of time in front of the crowd that's gathering because it makes me more relaxed when I'm my own warm up act. So this woman comes up to me, she goes, I wasn't gonna read Rick anymore. I just couldn't do it. He's just bothered. He makes so many mistakes. He bothers me. And I go, okay, well, I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a tightrope. You don't get them all.
Yeah.
Sometimes they fall off.
Yeah.
And she goes, and then my sister told me, you got to read the book, the new book. She goes, I read it and I loved it, but that Rick.
That's
So, but
funny.
I'm kind of looking for that. I'm actually I
Yeah.
certainly don't want people to get so fed up with him, but I want them to see him as a real flawed person.
Yeah, you really accomplished that. And I found that fascinating as I was reading it because you're right. Typically, our protagonist, our hero, is pretty infallible, right? Like there might be a
Yeah.
couple things about him, but like Rick, we really see all of his flaws. And we
Yeah.
see his age in this book too. He's aging, everything hurts, he's made bad choices, he made wrong turns, he owns it. And, so you really, I think you fall in love with him a little more, and maybe you are frustrated by him, to that woman's point, but you want to know if he makes it to the end. So it really, I think, helps with the pacing.
Yeah, well, thanks. The one thing I wanted to do, well, the one rule I did adhere to, which was that everything mattered, every physical and emotional scar had to have resonance. So
Mm.
that's carried over with the physical part and clearly with the emotional part. But I also didn't want it. Well, let's see, the guy gets shot in his shoulder in the second chapter, and then he's pitching batting practice to the Padres in the 10th chapter. I just didn't want to have that. I wanted to have
Yeah, yeah.
the physical stuff carries over. And I had one book where he had his ribs bruised early in the book, and they're bothering him when he makes movements and he gets in some physical altercations. So they bother him. But there's one point near the end where one of those Easter egg characters, a guy I know, I made him a bad guy, and
That's great. I
he
love
clipped
it.
off the end of Rick's finger with gardening shears.
Mm.
And that's an actual pain I know because I stuck my finger in a lawnmower one time and I lost the end of it when I was 19.
Hmm.
But I'm thinking as Rick is starting to feel that pain, he's also making some motion. I'm thinking, well, wait a second, where's the hierarchy of pain here? Is it his finger that's no longer there, or is it his ribs that still really hurt when he's moving these gyrations? So always try to keep the uh, the pain threshold. What goes first?
Well, how do you keep track of all that? Do you have like a spreadsheet of like all of Rick's injuries over the years, or how does that work?
Well, I mean, that's what an organized writer would do, right?
I'm getting the
So what I
sense
have to
you're.
do, there are times when Rick takes off his shirt, and it's generally for kind of a kind of ooh factor for whoever sees him without the shirt. And it's been a couple in front of a couple of women, but it hasn't led to any. It's not a sexual thing. It's just he just happens to have his shirt off, and I want to see the roadmap of his scars. But when I do that, I have to go. Let me see where was he almost disemboweled? Was it on the right or the left side? Under which eye was he shot in the face? And so I have to go back to other books and like find the injuries and try to put them in.
That's great. You
You
make
know,
more work for yourself.
yeah, I told myself after every book until about maybe 5 or 6, I said, well, this is it, man. I've got a little time. I'm going to write the Bible. I'm going to put all the stuff in you should to keep track of your characters. 10 books, never did it.
But that doesn't sound like as much fun as working on the new project.
Exactly.
No one wants to go backward.
Exactly.
I love Moira. Moira,
Yeah.
do I say that
Moira,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Tell us where did she come from? Who is she to you?
Well, I'm glad you like her. A lot of my readers like her, and I love her. Moira was never going to be on the page. One of those rules was Rick was going to be a lone wolf. No Superman, physical Superman sidekick who could get him out of any physical situation. No Playboy money guy sidekick who could bail him out of financial situations, and no humorous sidekick that could lighten the mood. And thank God that I brought Moira in the second book, because I think Rick would have just been too dour, too insular, and yeah, I would never would have made it 10 books. I mean, I might have liked him, but they probably wouldn't. I probably could have sold more than three. So in the second book, I needed a private investigator for one scene, and Rick had actually taken this person's Moira's work from her, but he didn't know it. The family made a decision. He didn't know it. So because she's a private investigator, she knows how to find people. She hammers on his door at his house and starts. She's like 5 foot nothing, and a little very petite but physically fit person, and she's yelling at him. He's going, "Hey, what's that? Whoa, 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 whoa!" And so once they started talking to each other, and I realized, well, I like her. I'm going to keep her in the book. And then their relationship grew, and I put her in the next book because he needed her help for something.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
she's been the conscience of the book ever since the fourth book, Blood Truth. Again, I was going to use her for one scene, but then she said something, and then things really turned around. So
She wasn't going to let you forget
happy
about her.
accident, completely happy accidents. Really, one of my favorite characters to write. Their interaction, it's kind of a big sister, little brother thing, and she's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
she's also more well-rounded. Rick will fly off the handle, and she will think about things. So
Hmm.
she kind of evens him out.
I like that Rick claims that she has no shortcomings.
Exactly. Well, she doesn't really. Well, some come up.
So, when you're writing these characters, the bad guys, who's the most fun to write? The bad guys or the good guys?
Bad guys. I think Rick's fun because he's got some of both, but
Yeah,
the
that's
bad
true.
guys. There's a character who was in the first book, and he's in this book. He's very
Theodore.
important in this book.
Yeah.
Peter Stone,
Oh, Peter Stone. Yeah, yeah,
and I put him in audit. You put him in the first book, Yesterday's Echo, and I was writing him really almost sociopathic, and he just was doing things. He had goal. I mean, he had things he wanted. He had his own goals, but he was doing things that seemingly just to um, bother people, hurt people, and I kind of eased off on that on revision. And then at the end, I gave him a reason why he'd be doing these things, and it related to family.
yeah. Hmm.
And and of course, the old saying is the bad guy thinks he's the hero in the book. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
once I really dug into that, I mean, he's still very nasty. He does like sticking the needle into Rick. Definitely, that's one of his highlights. Just kind of sticking the needle in and twisting it to Rick. But Rick can take it. And there's this grudging respect they've developed over the years because he's been in about 4 books, and he tried to kill Rick once, but he saved his life once and bargained for it another time. And he kind of almost to me was kind of like this antagonistic father-son situation by the end. And and even in this book, he seemingly has good intentions somewhat, and he does, but then there's also something else because he's Peter Stone.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I don't like writing about the bad guys. For they're fun. They're always fun. There's a Russian mob guy who's very fun to write about. But they have to have reasons for what they do, and I think that's important. I think every character and every scene has to have reasons for what they do. And I try to think about that when Rick's being a jerk to a waiter in a restaurant, just because he's maybe asking, he's being a jerk because he's trying to find out information. But I'm thinking the waiter's just trying to get through his day. So I try to make try to have everybody, even if it's one scene, they have to have goals too. And I try to remember that.
I think you do a really good job of accomplishing that.
Thank you.
There's a series on TV, I forget where it's at, but it's called Loudermilk, and it's about this.
Oh,
Have you seen it?
is that the one with what's that actor's name?
I forget his name, but he's a washed up like Rolling Stone music critic.
Was he in Swingers?
He Yeah, he might have been. Well, I tell
He
you
was one of the
what,
guys, one of the gang in Swingers. Yeah,
he might
I
have
like that
been.
actor.
And Loudermilk really reminds me of Swingers. For our listeners, you're going to have to go watch these things. But what I wanted to say was, Loudermilk is an asshole. He's an asshole to waiters in a restaurant for no reason. And it doesn't really work for me because, like, on the one hand, oh, he's actually a really good guy who just can't help from being an asshole. And I don't really buy it. Like, there's no reason, like, I'm not understanding why, right? Either you're an asshole or you're not. And in your book, Peter Stone to me is fully fledged, even though I haven't read the other books where he first appears. And I get both sides of him. And I kind of root for him in a way because I can see that there is a good side to him. And I want him to be the good guy in the end. We won't tell our readers what he does, but I buy his character wholly. So well
Well,
done.
that's good. That's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, but it's funny you mentioned the waiter thing. I was like, that reminds
Yeah,
me
there
of
has to
the
be.
show.
If you're being an asshole, there has to be a reason.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there's some themes in this book, and we sort of touched on this earlier, but one of them is the dads and daughters theme that kind of weaves throughout this. When you sat down to write this book, well, actually, let me ask you a question. Are you a plotter? You plot out your books, or do you fly by the seat of your pants? Are you a pantser?
Remember when I talked about the Bible I don't have
Yeah,
for my
yeah, yeah.
characters?
You're a pantser. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had no idea that those themes were going to happen. As
Well,
they're
I do.
happening, do you realize it? Like, oh, this is happening. This is good.
Well, this is the 10th book, so I certainly have a character arc. And every book, every Rick book, I have this. I have actually this book. I knew I wanted to end up in the mountains with Rick having no communication with anyone, no chance for anyone else to help him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I knew, and I always have an idea I know who the bad guys are. I have a vague, nebulous idea of the ending. I know how to get there. But the major thing that I work off is Rick's major subplot. What is going on in his life that taking a case will make more difficult, and kind of vice versa. And so in this book, he's estranged from his wife, and he does get to see his daughter every couple of weeks, but he's got this disease. He knows his life is probably in real life. People with CTE don't the average lifespan is 53, but I think there's a lot of people older than that, thank God. But so
I
he's
was going to
dealing
say,
with
I'm 53. This
disease.
is a problem for me.
Yeah, and he's feeling the symptoms in many ways. And in some earlier books, I touch upon it, but he's feeling it in this book a little bit. But he knows that his lifespan is shorter than most, and he also knows that life will knock you down because he's been knocked down many times. And so what he wants to do, the most important thing, he wants to get back together with his wife and his daughter. That's the most important thing. But if he can't, he wants to leave a safety net for his daughter in case when life knocks her down. And if she's a teenager when that happens, because she's 20 months old in this book, I think he won't be. The odds are he won't be around when it happens to her as a teenager or older. So number one, I want to get back to my family, but my responsibility as a parent is to make life as easy or lessen the bumps along the way as I can for my child, even after I'm gone. So his goal is and he's a private investigator. He makes decent money, doesn't make a whole lot of money, but his goal is to get that safety net started. And there's one person who knocks on his door at 7:30 in the morning, Peter Stone, who is the kind of person that has the money that can do that. But he also knows this will be something I cannot trust this man. He will lie to me. It
Yeah.
will be dangerous, but he offers him $50,000 and 25 grand up front. And how can Rick can't say goodbye to that, even though you can't say no to another, even though he's taking a case that helped, the kind of case that forced his wife to get away from him because it's going to be dangerous and she can't have that in their lives.
Yeah.
So he's got to weigh those two separate things. And ultimately, it's his responsibility as a father that comes through. I have to do this for my kid.
He's a contradictory character in a lot of ways, but he acknowledges that. Like, he's the first to tell us as readers.
Yeah, he knows he screwed up. He knows he's messed up. He's
very
honest with himself. Very honest with himself.
He really is. And again, I found that unique to Rick from other books I've read, similar, which I thought was pretty cool. One of the things I liked about reading this book is it's based in San Diego. And of course, I live in San Diego, as our listeners know. And, just going to like Warwick's bookstore, there's a scene where he's in the bookstore. It's just kind of awesome. But one of the things I wanted to ask you, you mentioned earlier, you knew he'd end up in the mountains.
Yeah.
How much scouting do you do? Do you know, like, or is this just organic, like where he ends up? Or do you do scouting in advance? I know you said you don't keep the Bible, but like when you're in a restaurant or at a certain place, are you like jotting down ideas of where Rick can show up in the next book?
Well, I definitely like to go to places that I'm going to write about. That's why I love writing about San Diego, because at any time I can get in my car and drive around. I find where people live and characters live in my books. I find that through open houses. I drive around the weekends and go check out houses.
Oh my God, that's brilliant.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really cool. But for this one, okay, I go to Lake Tahoe after Labor Day or a Memorial Day, after Labor Day every year. I go to Lake Tahoe. I've been doing it for 50 years with my family as an adult. And so I thought, hey, I'm sure there's places in Lake Tahoe where I can go where there won't be any phone service. It's exactly what I need. And I can write it off. I can go to Tahoe and write off my vacation. How brilliant is that? And so then I realized, well, wait a second. He's going to be following somebody at night and in a car. In Tahoe from here, if you drive fast like I am, you can do it in about 9 hours. And that's just stopping once for a pee.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a fast
But generally
drive.
it's about 10 hours or more.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, well, there's going to be 2-3 stops. How, that's too many opportunities for the person he's following to see him and realize they're being followed. So a few years ago, on social media, as you know, we all have friends on social media that we've never met or we met one time. I was doing what I do on social media, which is promoting. When a book comes out, I promote it. And this was Last Redemption, my 8th book. So a woman who I'd actually met at a writer's conference 8 years before, instant messaged me. She goes, hey, when are you going to come to Pine Mountain Club and talk about your books? And I said, well, when someone invites me and when someone tells me where it is. I'd never heard of it. I thought immediately Pennsylvania came to mind. But
yeah.
So it turns out if you drive up, here's the funny part, talking about going to Tahoe. If you drive up the Grapevine, I-5, the Grapevine, about an hour north of Santa Clarita, there's an exit called, I'm blanking on the exit name. It's not Pine Mountain, but it's some Fraser Mountain Park exit.
Yeah.
And so honestly, I've made the drive to Northern California up the 5 over 100 times in my life, up and back, 50 up, 50 back. Never gotten off on that exit. And so when this woman invites me there, so I tell my girlfriend, and I said, hey, I'm going to go to this place. She goes, you can't go there. I go, what do you mean? She goes, it's not a real place. They're going to murder you in your sleep. I said, no, I'm going. I said, not only am I going to go, it's going to become like a yearly event. Whenever I have a book, they're going to have me up there. It's going to be like a Matt Coyle weekend. And I said, but you're coming with me just in case I get stabbed in the middle of the night. So we go up there. It's a really small place. As described in the book, it's a 10-second drive through town if you're not going very fast. But they have a golf course, and it's a really art, a lot of people in all the arts, and really nice people. They had an event for us. They took us out for dinner, and it was wonderful. I met some really great people. And you can't get phone service up there.
You were like, this is perfect.
It's perfect. So then a couple years later, when I'm writing this book, I realized I have the place. It's a drive that you would make from San Diego without having to stop for gas unless you were half a tank or something before
Yeah.
when you started. So that actually was perfect. And ironically, I wrote the scene about this. In the scene, there's kind of this mountain enclave. There's only one house on this long back roads into the mountains. And I found that after I wrote that scene, I found that road. There are no homes on it, but I found the absolutely perfect road in isolation. I mean, it all kind of came together. I thought, wow, this is kismet. It's got to happen.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
It's funny because I've made that drive many times going up to Yosemite or Lake Tahoe or
Yeah.
whatever. And I've always wanted to take that exit, but I'm like, oh, I don't have time for it. I'll do it next time, but I never have. So when Rick took that exit in the book, I was like, oh my God,
Oh, that's so funny.
I get to know what
That's so
happens on
cool.
that road. Yeah. It was pretty
And it
cool.
really is like when you're looking, you're seeing scrub brush. You
Hmm.
don't see any real big trees or anything as you go up the freeway. You go back 10 miles and there are pine trees, towering pine trees. If you go up to the very top of the one mountain, you can probably get up to close to 6,000 feet.
That's incredible. Well, I'm
Yeah,
definitely going to go. And who knows, maybe you're going to turn that into a tourist town single handedly.
I tried.
It's
They're not,
possible.
they're not as receptive as I hope they'd be for that.
And they're like, actually, we want you to stay away. This is our place.
Pretty much.
So you've written a book a year since 2013. Is that right?
Yeah, actually 13, it took me 2 years to write the next book, but yeah, ever since then it's been a book a year. However, I will not have a book coming out this year, so I've broken the streak because writing
Mm,
something new and it's a
sure.
tougher slog, third person, a whole lot of challenges.
Yeah.
And when I'm done with it, my agent's going to have to sell it. I mean, the idea is to sell it to a different publisher. I love my publisher; they've been great to me, but we're trying to climb the ladder a little bit.
Very cool. Very cool. As I was reading this book, I'm like, oh, this has got to be the last book. But you just said maybe not. Maybe a break, maybe the last one, but you don't know yet, huh?
I have ideas, but it's got Honesty's end in it. The end is in the title. What the challenge for me was for if it was going to be the end or just a pause, perhaps, I wanted to give Rick his due. I wanted it to be on a level that I could be proud of, and I've been proud of all my books. I mean, good or bad, I think they need. I say what I'm trying to say, and so that was for a while. I was kind of stuck for various reasons, some personal ones. And I thought, I don't even think this book's any good. But then
You
with
mean the one you're
revision and
the one you're working on now, or
no,
obviously?
well, I think that sucks too. I think they all suck because I'm writing them. No, but Odyssey's End, I was really concerned about it. And then once I finished it and polish and polish and polish, I thought if it is the end, it's a very good spot for it to be. And if it's a long pause, it's a very good spot.
Hmm.
So I was very happy with the way it came out.
I gotta ask, when you're working on a project and you think, wow, this really sucks, like, how do you
Yeah.
keep going? How do you not just say, I'll find something else?
Well, there are a lot of writers better than me that I've listened to over the years, and the great John Lesquat, spelled Lescorat. I mean, everybody's read him. We just probably didn't know how to pronounce his name. He said it. He said at a conference one time, and I may have seen this. May have been before I was even had an agent. I mean, I just got an agent. I think it was in San Francisco. He said, when I'm writing a first draft, I allow myself to write shit. I thought, you know what? I get that. That works for me
Yeah.
because if you don't outline, you have to find your way through the story. And there'll be many times where I realize I've spent all day on a chapter that will not make the book, but it helps me get to where I'm going. And it also helps me give me a greater sense of what I'm trying to do.
Mm.
Um, but as I'm writing them, I think, well, this isn't very good. I haven't been in writers. I was in writers groups for 20 years. I haven't for the last couple books. And my editor, my publisher, my agent, always gives me a final read before I turn it in. And my girlfriends she's helping me with this current book. She's got a really good eye and feel. But I kind of always think this is shit. And then when I finally read the first draft, which I've already allowed myself for it to be shit, I really, it's not that bad. This isn't that bad. And then I do a lot of revision. I revise. They aren't generally huge story revisions, but it's just a lot of polishing, a lot of, there's something that I do, which I've mentioned before in talks. I mentioned my subconscious, and I really am wide open to my subconscious as I'm running a first draft. So something invariably will come up many times, and it will be a sentence somebody says, a thought maybe Rick has in a Rick book, or just a certain car drives by, and my subconscious put it there for a reason. I will put it in the story. I call it dropping. I'll drop an anchor, dropping anchors. And maybe by the time I finish writing that day, I understand what it means. Maybe I don't. And if I get through the first draft and hasn't led me to where I really want to go, then I pull it up. I pull up the anchor at the end. But I would say 75% of the time, these little things out of my subconscious really give me a greater understanding of what I'm trying to do. It'll be one little thing that will nudge me in a certain direction, that this is where you've been trying to go and you just haven't been able to get there. So I'm wide open my subconscious.
Wow. Do you write every day?
Yeah.
How long do you think you normally write?
It varies.
Yeah, okay.
Probably 4 to 6 hours, and then maybe on a Saturday or a Sunday. I can't say I write every day. I mean, my girlfriend lives in Temecula. I live in San Diego, so I go up and see her. But so Saturdays are generally kind of out. But and then maybe a Sunday I write for a couple hours. But I try to write every day, and when I'm especially when I'm under contract. I don't have to be under contract right now, so it's easier not to write. But it's put me behind. But once. It starts when I write a book, particularly if I'm under contract, it starts slowly. And I do I'll maybe write 5 days, 5 to 6 days in the beginning. But then as it gains momentum, I'm writing every day for sure. For sure. The last 6 months of the book, I'm writing every day.
Nice. When you sit down to write, do you read a little bit of what you had written the day before, or you just forge ahead?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a tip I got from the great Lawrence Block. I'm looking at my little writer's library I have here in one bookcase rather. And before I started writing all these years ago, I said, well, maybe I should read some of the people who know how to do it. And there's a great book on writing. I can't remember what it's called, by Lawrence Block, but this is a guy who's written professionally since I think he was 18, writing short stories. I mean, and for magazines and stuff. So that's all he's done his whole life. And what he does every day is he revises what he wrote the day before. And I took that up immediately, and it really works for me. It helps me get into the character's head, especially in first person, of course, but it helps me get back into the story. So yeah, I do that every day, and it is a way to kind of open up the vein to get back into it. Otherwise, you're just kind of staring at a blank, especially if you don't outline, you're staring at a blank page, like, where do I go now? And there's a lot of that too, but at least with revision, you're getting back into the flow.
Right on. Yeah. Do you have any advice for our listeners? A lot of our listeners are in fact writers. Just you've had such a wonderful 10 years of making it happen and getting through, that feeling of this is shit. So what kind of advice do you have for our listeners?
Well, first of all, I would say, write a Bible, outline.
Don't do what I did.
Don't do what I did. Sometimes I'm asked to teach at some things. I'm not a teacher. I'm a very good critiquer. I can critique very well, but I can't tell somebody how to do what I do because it's so messed up. However, what I've learned over the years is that, and if you're writing, it took me 10 years to get published, and 10 books and 11 years. I've been writing one character for over 20 years. So as flawed as my system is, or process, we'll call it, it is a process, and it has worked for me, and it's worked for me for 10 books. And there was a period halfway through my books where I thought, well, I need to get organized. I need to outline, and it just stunts me. It doesn't work for me. And writing this new book, I thought, well, I need to do a little bit more character study. And I said, it stunts me. So I learn the characters as I write them. It's very messy. It's inefficient, but it works for me. So I would say, if you've been at it for a while, trust your process. Yes, you can always change your process, tighten it up. Absolutely. I wish mine were tighter, but trust your process and write every day.
Just do it.
Write when it's hard, which is most of the time. Write when it's easy. And you don't have to write for 3, 4 hours every day. If you write an hour a day, as time permits, because we all have, well, I used to have a day job. I wrote 5 books with a full-time job. Um, just if you're doing it every day, that, maybe it's 5 days a week, what have you, is you're getting in a routine and you're getting closer to your story and it's not that hard. So you don't have these great gaps from, picking up from one to the other. You can kind of get back into the flow easier. It's nothing genius. It's just right. And then if you've been at it for a while, trust the process.
Yeah.
But again, don't be afraid to change.
Nice. Very nice. Well, Matt Coyle, thank you so much for joining us on The Premise. This has been a real pleasure.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm glad I caught you at the tail end of Rick Cahill's, and who knows, there may be more, but I'm really glad that I caught you before you stopped this 10-year stint, as it were. I look forward to seeing what's next from you.
Me too.
You more than anyone, I bet.
Absolutely. But thanks. It's been a pleasure. We've known each other kind of from a distance for many years, and it's a pleasure. And again, the job you guys do with San Diego Writers Conference is really great, and I highly recommend anybody going to the conference when they can. There's a lot of different things you can pick up. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I imagine you'll be a speaker at some point in the future.
Hope so.
I see that in your future for some reason.
Yeah. Just as long as I get across the bridge.
There you go. There you go. You can learn more about Matt Coyle on his website, mattcoylebooks.com, and you can find links there to follow him on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, X, whatever we want to call it. Again, thank you so much for joining us on The Premise today. This has been another episode of The Premise. You can visit us online at thepremisepod.com and subscribe and rate or review wherever you get your podcasts. Those reviews really help us get the word out and increase our subscriber base. You can follow me, your host, at Jeniffer Grace on Instagram, or follow me on Facebook at Jennifer Thompson Consulting. And of course, check out the San Diego Writers Festival.com. Until next week, thanks for listening. Goodbye. All right. You guys didn't say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.